Hi, everybody. Welcome to my neighborhood. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Today is going to be kind of a mixed match of things. We are going to be talking about the Witcher Season 2, but we're going to save that for just a little bit later in the show, as there's a couple things I want to get started with and talk about. That was weird. So one of the things we need to talk about is last night's Hawkeye season finale. I got to tell you, going into it, I didn't think we would get that much of. I didn't think we'd get that much of it's going to be hard to talk about this with no spoilers. I'm going to try. The villain they introduced at the end of episode 5 in just a little bad paused video. Thought he would just be a little bit of part of episode 6. He was all over episode 6. I guess once you introduce him, it's like like opening the tap. It just it's coming out. So, and I did love. I was surprised by one of the outfits, and then when it's pointed out to me that it's directly taken from a comic book cover, it suddenly went from why in the hell to, oh, damn, they got that perfect. So I loved it. I loved the episode. I was a little leery going into the series. I didn't warm to Kate very quickly. I thought she was obnoxious. I thought they were going over the top with pointing at Jack as the bad guy and stuff like that. And this really wasn't a big mystery movie or series. Everything was pretty much laid out with huge breadcrumb. I mean, it wasn't even breadcrumbs. They were throwing loaves of bread out there for people to follow. Here's sourdough. Here's some white bread. Here's some rye. Pumpernickel. It was pretty easy to follow. So I don't think there was any real big twists in the series. But then again, this is supposed to be a Christmas story. So it changes some of the things that they are expecting to do. But I've heard a lot of people get upset. For one, I want you to keep in mind that in the MCU, just when something happens off panel doesn't mean it's what we think it means. If somebody gets shot, but we don't see it, doesn't mean they're dead. Now, I know a lot of people were thinking that with Kate's father, and we're going to go all into this next week on Tuesday. This will be our big Tuesday show where I will pull out my wild speculations. There's one speculation I made that it was more of a joke, but I threw it up on Facebook and Twitter, and I said, what if the ending of Hawkeye is just Jack Duquesne teaching the LARPers how to actually sword fight? And I posted that a couple weeks ago, and that might have happened. That might be happening. I think the characters all grew on me. I think I came out of it liking so many of the characters. I really liked Kate by the end of it. My call on how the show was actually going to end was right, but I got a lot of things wrong. I mean, and again, I think a lot of it is I was reading too much into it. I was trying to bring too much of the comics into it. And I think that's where a lot of these problems are with WandaVision, with some of these other shows. They tend to be much simpler and more dialed down than what some of the comic fans expect. This is that case, oh, well, Jack and Clint have a history in the comics. Well, that's lovely. It doesn't mean they're going to have one here. They're just bringing him in because he's a Hawkeye character and it makes sense, but they're going to use him differently. in WandaVision, everybody was expecting Mephisto to be the true bad guy because he was in the story they were adapting, but they weren't. They were inspired by those stories. They weren't doing a direct adaptation, and they've never said they were doing a direct adaptation. That's where I think things get off the rail, because I'm seeing people from last night's episode being upset by certain things, but everything they're upset about is what didn't happen, what they expected to happen, and then it not coming to fruition. But it's not like Marvel came out and said, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Stay tuned. And then later on, they don't do X, Y, and Z, and everybody gets upset because we read into that. Oh, well, they did this, so it has to mean that they're going to do that. No, it doesn't. They're telling their story. They're telling their version of certain events from the comics, and they're making it into a story. I've done that many times. I've done it just recently. I used to be I'm still, I guess, technically a professional photographer. I've been published. I have a book out there of my photography. You can get it on Amazon. Yeah. By the way, ever just put my name in Amazon search list, you're going to see a lot of weird things on there. But I was a photographer for 20 plus years, working with models, doing everything from glamour to nude photography and stuff like that. And I had a lot of very strange things happen in that time. Well, I got asked to do a romantic erotic graphic novel, kind of in the same vein as Sunstone or Swing, stuff like that. Because I know Top Cow is having a lot of success with those genre of books. And a publisher asked me to do something similar. And I wrote a 120-page graphic novel. And I took some of the more strange situations that I had been in, and I sewed them together with a new narrative about two characters, an advertising photographer that gets pulled into the fashion glamour world, and an up-and-coming supermodel. And just very, very much the guy out of place trying to exist in this world, and the woman is larger than life. And the book is called Karma. And I didn't mean to, I was going to mention it today, but segue is actually working pretty well because, like I said, I was inspired by some events that actually happened to me, but I sewed them together with a completely different narrative. So it's not like I'm telling you my story. I'm just borrowing events. So, Kyle was just kind enough to put the link up. This is the Kickstarter. It hasn't gone live yet. So right now what it is, it's the landing page that you can click on, let me know. And then when it is live, they'll let you know. And we've got the interior art is by an artist named Carlos Renault, who is actually him. What did I do?
When you read that in the comments, they'll say, and it's pointing up at the thing above it. Because of the way you see the comments, it doesn't look the same way it'll see to anybody who watches the show. Did you freeze? Interesting. I think we broke Dan, everybody. So while he figures out how to unfreeze himself, I will just talk to you. You guys should back Dan's Kickstarter. That's a thing. It's right there.
Okay.
Are you back?
I'm back. Okay. I'm back.
I stalled by saying very little.
Okay. Yeah. So this book is coming out. We've got interior arts by Carlos Renault, and he did an absolutely amazing job. And I didn't make it easy for him. And I got to tell you, there are some very interesting parts of the script where I'm having to describe some very intricate things, some very intimate things, some objects and items I want him to put in, and I'm having to include photos. So because certain unique items are hard to describe. So it was a very interesting script. And then we got covers. We got multiple covers on this graphic novel. We've got the amazing Stefan Sedgwick from Sunstone is doing one, and it's gorgeous. You can see that one if you click the link. There's also a cover by Mirko Andolfo, who is doing a similar genre book with Sweet Paprika. And then I got to reteam. Okay, trying this again. So, Michael D. Pascal did the Naughty Nice cover, so you can get either one of those. So there's actually 4 covers you can choose from. So check it out. Hit that little reminder button, and then I'll let you know when it goes live. And I'd appreciate it. This was a fun graphic novel to write. I think it's a very interesting story, and I'd love to do more with the characters and stuff and see where they go from here. But it's a good old fashioned love story with a lot of steaminess. Probably a good way to put it. So if you're a fan of Sunstone, if you're a fan of swing, it is in that genre, that line. So, all right. But getting back to Hawkeye, I think the show did really well, wrapping up a lot of the outstanding issues. I think the reveal, they do wrap up the thing with the watch. It's subtle. You need to have a little MCU knowledge to realize how important that is. I think you can get it without the background story, but on Tuesday we'll talk about exactly what that means. There's a lot of great stuff in it, and I was really happy with it. I enjoyed it. I actually watched it, turned it off, sat there for about 2 minutes and went, I'm going to watch it again. So basically I watched it from midnight to 1 and then 1 to 2. And this was the longest episode yet of any of the Marvel TV shows. It was an hour and 1 minute. So all those times we sat there going, oh, they've got to do a long episode because to wrap all this stuff up and they don't. Well, we finally got one. So very, very cool on that. By the way, I should remind you guys that coming up after me is Comics Collectibles with Rex and John. And because of Spider-Man No Way Home coming out this week, which we did a big spoiler review of yesterday, they're going to have a lot of Spider-Man collectibles up for offer. I've seen some of them. There's some really cool stuff. There is a signed and remarked cover by Ken Hazer of Spider-Man. It's a cool headshot. There's some really good Spider-Man books that are available, whether they're CGC, they're author signed. So you'll want to stick around for that. It's going to be a good show, and they're going to have some really great stuff. So Spider-Man fans are definitely want to pay attention for that. Tomorrow's show is going to be, I am not going to be here for tomorrow. We're going to run a Pop Go the Writers in its place. And the reason is that I will be holiday baking. And I couldn't convince Kyle that I should do the show as a baking show. The Great Comic Nerd Bake Off or something. But so we're going to just go with Pop Go the Writers, and then I'll be back next week talking about the Hawkeye season finale, We'll also do a best of 2021. Kyle and I are still putting that together. And then on Thursday, we will talk about the Book of Boba Fett. So looking forward to that. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the main topic. The Witcher. Now, the first thing I should probably mention is I was a big fan of the first season of The Witcher. I liked it a lot. But with it being a bingeable thing where you can watch all at once, you know, that's what I did. I watched them over one weekend, you know, and most shows you do that. You watch it and then you kind of put it away and you don't think about it again until somebody comes along and goes, hey, there's a second season. This one was a little different for me because I went out and I got the audiobooks of The Witcher. And they're kind of interesting. There's the main books, and then there's some prequel books that are like a collection of short stories. And I focused on the prequel ones first because I like reading things chronologically, which is hilarious because the first season of The Witcher was anything but chronological. That was the hardest thing for me. And I know a lot of people was that until you come to the realization in season one that there are 3 different timelines being told at the same time, the show is very confusing. But if you sit down and you tell somebody, and I did this for a few people who were going to go watch it, I said, all right, Yennefer's timeline is way back. Geralt's timeline is somewhere in between, and Ciri's timeline is now. And then eventually they'll all come together, and that's what happens in season 1. And once you get that, it's great, you know. The humor levels, everything else, just absolutely awesome. Well, the books are that way too. The humor comes from the books. Listening to them, they're great. I mean, you have the humorous moments, you have the crazy creatures and everything else. And some of the stories being adapted come from the prequel books. The very first episode of season 2 is straight from the prequel books about the guy that's turned into a beast. Now, let's go ahead and run the spoiler banner, Kyle, if you would, please. All right. Because I don't want to trip up and say something that you guys are going to get upset about, because I think we do need to talk spoilers. So the first episode of the season has him basically ending up taking on, they have different names for all these things. It's not a vampire, but it's very similar to a vampire. And that's what they do here, is they've got their own little, it's Polish folklore in a lot of ways. It's Polish and Russian and Slavic folklore. So it's like what they call the Baba Yaga is completely different. It's, the Deathless Mother, I think, is how it translates. The names are going to slip by me on a lot of these things because, again, it's just they're not names I'm not familiar with. But let's see, Grain of Truth was the first one. And I was hoping they were going to give what Verena is. But so she's kind of a vampire character. But the main the guy that he's helping is also a beast. And it's kind of a Nivellen. So it's kind of an interesting setup there. It's like a takeoff Beauty and the Beast. And if you don't recognize the guy, he's from Game of Thrones. He's Tormund. He's Tormund from Game of Thrones that everybody loved. Loved the memes of him looking at Brienne, I think is her name, the big woman in the armor. So, but he shaves his beard when we see him as a human, and it's like, wait, that's Christopher Ivju. Okay, so that was cool. But I'm kind of off track here. Where I was originally going to go, the I mean, you don't need to read the books or play the video games to really enjoy the series. But back in October, they dropped an animated movie called, I think it was The Night of the Wolf or something to that effect. That's kind of important. I didn't realize how important it was going to be, but I watched it anyway. Actually, just recently, I wasn't going to watch it. And then Lisa and I were looking for something to watch like 2-3 weeks ago. And it's like, well, there's that. And she's like, oh, it's animated. I went, it might still be good. And we got nothing else. So we watched it. And again, I didn't realize how important it was going to be. This is the origin story of Vesemir, who is basically the Witcher that brought Geralt in and trained him and is trying to keep the Witchers alive. There used to be a lot more Witchers, and they used to be a lot easier making Witchers. The problem is there was an event involving Vesemir, and the guy who was the head of the Witchers at the time doing some unsavory things. So Vesemir had to end up kind of taking him down and dealing with the mess. And the fallout of it is they lost the elixir or the components for the elixir that make Witchers. So basically all the Witchers they have is all they can make, or that all they can do, you know. And when one dies, their numbers just get smaller. It's not like they can make another one. At least that's the story going into it. And it's interesting because without that knowledge, you could probably still watch the season, but you miss some certain key elements. And the main thing it shows us is why the Witchers were not trusted. Why so many people are skeptical of the Witchers? Because if these were just these great monster hunters, there should be some kind of legend or lore that with, you know, this awe-inspiring thing. And instead, they're looked down upon and distrusted. And that had to come from somewhere. Well, the animated movie, Night of the Wolf, is where it comes from. So take the time and watch it. Even if you watch it after season 2, it'll fill in some gaps for you. It's also a very interesting and good story. So, but we go into this new season with this new dynamic. The first season is basically Geralt and Yennefer have this on-again, off-again love affair through the whole first season. But Geralt also seems to have romantic interests with a bunch of other people, including Trish Marigold, another sorceress who comes to play here. But the whole thing is that, you know, his connection to Ciri, or Princess Cerelia of Sintra, and how she is his child of surprise. Now, this is one of the most unique things that I've heard of in this series. And I'm not saying that this is something they created. It might not be. I don't know. There could be, I mean, there might be a lore or something about child of surprise. But they use it here, and it's huge because one of the big things in this series is about parenthood, in a sense. Yennefer spends the entire first season wanting to get back the ability to have a child. That which she gave up to become a sorceress. Geralt also has lost the ability to father a child because of what he's gone through. And if you think about it, that's kind of an allegory of people who put all their effort into their careers and give up being having a family. Now, I find that kind of interesting that plays out. But in season 2, it changes a little bit. There is still the whole thing about wanting family, wanting a child. The elves that get introduced here are very big on it because there hasn't been a pureblood elf born in a very long time, and one of the head elves, who's also a magic user, is pregnant, and that's a big thing. But the series, I mean, that's a huge theme about, passing on the legacy and, becoming a father figure. And in that time between season 1 and season 2, Geralt embraces the fatherhood. He becomes a father very quickly after finally meeting up with Ciri at the end. And I was going to explain the child of surprise thing for anybody who doesn't know what that is. Basically, is when you do something for somebody else, and it's big, like you save their life, you save their house, you do something big. They feel indebted to you. Instead of saying, oh, well, you could give me money, you could give me this, you basically say, well, I will take whatever is a surprise to you. Whatever you've come into possession of, that is a surprise to you. And it's interesting because when he does this, he saves someone's life. And it's all about this whole child of surprise thing. But when he does, he says to the guy, he saves this guy's life. He says, well, I'll take what is a surprise to you. Well, that turns out to be Ciri. He's the child of surprise. And that's how fate is supposed to now sew together Ciri and Geralt. So season 2 is him embracing that role. He opens up a bit more. He becomes a little warmer towards her. And they form this bond. Now, she's grown up without a father because her parents were killed on a boat years ago going to, I don't remember where they were going, but supposed to have drowned on a boat going overseas. She was raised by her grandmother, who was single for most of it, and by a wizard named Mousic, who's an old friend of Geralt's. So you have that going on. So she doesn't really have a strong father figure. Mousic is probably as close, and she watched him turn on her and die. And it wasn't really him that turned on her. It was a mimic who took over his appearance, but there was a betrayal feeling to it. Now, so here she has this new father figure, and she embraces it quickly. And he embraces basically having a family, and I can understand that. So that's kind of the setup going into season 2. And they're actually trying to find Yennefer in the beginning because of the battle where basically the battle at the end of season 1, and she uses fire magic, which is forbidden, and now nobody knows if she's dead or alive. So let's pause there. We'll take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll get back into The Witcher season 2. Be right back.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're doing The Witcher Season 2 right now. We're doing the spoiler conversation. Go ahead and run that spoiler warning again, just in case. All right. Also, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons and all those things. Show us that you're here. Show us that you love us. I'd appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. And, help spread the word about the show. If you're enjoying the show, you come out here a couple days a week to see what I'm talking about, tell your friends about it. Let's get more people into the conversation, please. All right. So, Season 2 of The Witcher. We kick off with kind of a standalone story about the beast and how he's been cursed. It's an interesting tale, but it doesn't really play into the overall story. The big change here is that in the novels, this all takes place before Ciri. This is one of the prequel stories. So having Ciri in it as a factor does change it up a bit, but it's still the same story overall. But it's also used as an interesting lesson for Ciri to basically do what she's told. Also, we kind of start getting here a sense of just how important and interesting Geralt's horse is, Roach. Now, in the books, Roach is kind of an interesting character because he seems to be much smarter than the average horse, but he dies occasionally. And when he dies, he gets replaced. Geralt gets another horse. It's usually a brown mare, just like, or whatever he is, or she is. But he always names it Roach. It's just always Roach. And the author has never explained why. He's got some weird naming conventions. I mean, Roach, Jaskier, which is another interesting one, Jaskier the Bard, because how that translates is basically to yellow flower. And when they translate the books, they don't call him Jaskier, they call him Dandelion. So the bard's name in the books is Dandelion. But I guess when they decided to, the English version, so when they decided to do a TV series of it, they thought, no, we're not going to call him Dandelion. That's a little too on the nose. Let's go with the other name, Jaskier, and just go with that. So, and for fans of Jaskier and his songs and stuff, he doesn't show up early, but when he does show up, there's a big impact. He plays an important role. And how this season ends, it looks like he's going to play a big role in season 3 as well. And it's pretty obvious there's going to be a season 3. As it is, there's going to be a prequel series with Michelle Yeoh in it. starting next year. So before we get a third season of The Witcher, we'll get this other one, which is something of the blood, or it's something in the blood, or it's a blood-related title. But yeah, so we'll be getting another season of The Witcher lore, but not of this particular Witcher, which I think is a great idea, because they can jump back around and do these side stories or seasons using other actors, and then come back and bring back the main characters again, so that it's a little quicker pace. You're not tying up Henry Cavill on a yearly schedule. He can go out and do his movies and stuff like that, or and still get content. So I think that's a pretty wise thing. And and I like that they're bringing in different actors and stuff to tell different eras of this world, because it's a very fascinating world that they've got set up here. And I'm really enjoying it and digging into it. This season is very different to me. The first season had the 3 storylines that were all kind of converging into one. Season 2 is linear. We're really only following 2 main stories, Yennefer's and Geralt's, because Geralt and Ciri are together. So you don't need the third story. Those 2 have combined over here. But they're all taking place at the same time, and they all start at the same place, which is the battlefield from season 1. Geralt shows up looking for Yennefer and runs into the woman that trained her and a few other people, and then separated off. Now he heads for Kaer Morhen, which is the home of the Witchers, which is where the big attack happened in the animated movie. Again, you really should watch it. And what's left of the Witchers, which I think there's about 18 at this point, it's gotten pretty small. And Yennefer, on the other hand, has been wiped out after her use of fire magic and can no longer use magic. She doesn't have access to the chaos magic anymore. So she is captured by Nilfgaard and their sorceress, Phrygia. Again, names, man. She, of course, is already angry at Yennefer. Is that the station Yennefer got, she took from Phrygia. And Phrygia got bumped to Nilfgaard. So had Yennefer not tried to take the bigger position, this might not have happened. Phrygia ended up working for the White Flame, and the White Flame is kind of the driving force. And there's so many questions about him that we get answered, but it's in a very unique way. What everybody's trying to figure out is who the White Flame is. How does he know about Ciri's powers before Ciri does? Because basically, Nilfgaard's attack on Sintra was to capture Ciri, Princess Ciri. But before that, Ciri hadn't used any of her powers. So that's the big question going through this whole season, and the ending gives us that answer in a kind of a unique way. But we'll get to that in a minute. So you've got the Yennefer storyline, which is interesting because it involves Phrygia, Yennefer, and then a third sorceress, the elf sorceress, and I'm trying to see if I can get her name real quick. Is it Tissa? I think it's... Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's her. No, that's not her. Probably should have done this beforehand, but anyway. So you've got the elf sorceress, you got Phrygia, and you've got Yennefer, and they're all going together on this journey, and they're all having dreams that tie together. Fringilla is being guided by a black cloaked figure. The elf is being guided by a white cloaked figure, and Yennefer is being guided by a red cloaked figure. And it's all the same person. Basically, this is the Deathless Mother, their version of Baba Yaga. And they all make deals with her for what they're looking for. For the elf, she wants to have her child come into the world and have a better life. So that's her thing. Have an opportunity to, because the elves are all kind of beaten down at this point. They're hiding in the woods. Man has attacked them and driven them out. And again, it's kind of an allegory for Native Americans here in the U.S. So that's the story with her. Fringilla, of course, wants to serve the White Flame and wants power and has to move up and gets this kind of idea of how to make that happen. And Yennefer, of course, wants her powers back. He wants her access back to magic. So, like I said, there's all these different things going on, which I find kind of fascinating. And they do kind of, they do bring them together very well. But you've got that sideline story, and then you have Ciri and Geralt going back to Kaer Morhen and trying to fit in there and find out more about her and what she can do. Because the whole thing is that Geralt knows that she is super powerful and he's there to protect her, but he knows that her power has people hunting for her, searching for her, and he's trying to find a safe place. And he thinks Kaer Morhen is going to be the safe place. But of course, you bring a young woman into a den of witchers who aren't all like Geralt. Some of them are more womanizers. Some of them are much more gregarious and over the top and sarcastic. I mean, it's pretty interesting. And when they get there, there's one witcher who comes in, and it turns out that he is infected by, I want to say it was a stricken, but this tree creature. And it turns out it's in him and has converted him. And this is something that the Strigan isn't normally able to do. And we start learning that there's these mutated creatures out there that, are much more powerful than their normal versions. Well, they start looking into that. So now we've got this divergence again. Geralt ends up hooking up with, what was his name? Is it Vilgefortz? Yeah. Vilgefortz, who was a friend of Yennefer's in the beginning. He works for Stegobor. Well, he ends up hooking up with him and finding out about, originally he has Trish Marigold, the other sorceress that he met in season 1, show up to help train Ciri. Meanwhile, Ciri also starts training as a witcher, which becomes really even more interesting. Because while she's doing all the physical trials and stuff, and Geralt's off trying to track down where these mutated creatures are coming from, we find out all these things are coming together because what the Deathless Mother wants of Yennefer is for her to find Ciri and bring her to Sintra. So you've got all these things going on. But the bottom line is the way it pulls together is that it has to do with the monoliths that we see in season 1. And there's a monolith that Ciri destroys. And we realize that's very important because these monoliths aren't just honorifics to the past. They're actually beacons or doorways into other worlds, and they bring across creatures with them, these mutated creatures. So the fact that Ciri destroyed one of them basically opened the door to some of these creatures. And then they have to figure out how to close it. And Geralt's whole thing is to protect Ciri and find a way for her to control her powers. And Ciri is just trying to find not only a connection to Geralt, but also to find who she is and where she's going. And of course, the other Witchers are just messing with her and trying to get her to do obstacle courses that she doesn't have. She doesn't have the serum and stuff that the boys had as Witchers. Well, she gets out there and she is just beaten to crap by this obstacle course, knocked around, thrown off of it, bleeds. Well, Vesemir, the head Witcher, goes out the next day and discovers that any place she bled, a series of unique plants grew. And
okay.
Every time I say the princess's name, my cell phone wants to go off because Ciri, So, but every place she bled where these plants grew. And this told him, and he took them to Trish and goes, does this mean what I think it means? And we find out that not only is Ciri part elf, but we find out that she's actually elder, which were the ancient elves where all of the main power came from. So, there are very few of them left. And her blood is the missing ingredient to make new Witchers. So they actually make up, they get some blood from her. They tell her what it is, but, and they're going to give her, she wants to take the serum, but at the same time, Trish decides to kind of look into her memories and stuff and see what she's missing and discovers that Ciri is super powerful, like destroy the world prophecy type level powerful, and it frightens her. And she ends up running back to the Brotherhood to report to her superior that, this is not good. This is, where you sent me, this is going to be a problem. And, Tasia, kind of gets it. But so there's all the machinations going on with the Brotherhood and their stuff. And they want Ciri. The Niflgaard wants Ciri because that was what they originally going after. Now Yennefer wants Ciri because she wants her powers back. So you've got all these players involved. And it's getting really interesting. And there's also a flame mage sent out to, and it's hard to tell if he's supposed to bring back Ciri or if he's just supposed to kill Geralt. But he gets involved, and all of this going on, and then they start bringing back some of the extra characters from season 1. Jasker finally returns, and his role is interesting because he seems to have kind of changed a little bit. He's not as aloof and uncaring anymore. He actually has, he cares about what happened to the elves and is trying to help people, but very quietly. And he's got a benefactor. And the elf that helped Ciri in season 1 comes back, and he ends up being a spy for this mage named Dijkstra, who works for one of the opposing kingdoms. And you just got so many elements going on here that we went from the first season, which was just the 3 storylines, to pretty much Game of Thrones. You almost need a whiteboard to keep track of the political dealings. It's like, well, she's working with this guy, but he's actually a betrayer, and he's actually working for these guys. And then there's this other kingdom, and they're doing their stuff, and they've got their mage. And then there's Nilfgaard and the White Flame, who we don't know who he is. And there's all these different things going on. But again, it's very fascinating because unlike Game of Thrones, where it was just everybody dies, you get to know somebody and then they die, they really bring back a lot of these characters. They keep them around. There was an episode in season 1 that involved Yennefer and Geralt going on a hunt for a dragon, and Yennefer wanted to basically, this was one of her plans to be able to have kids again, and Geralt gets pulled into it because of Yennefer, and Jasker's there, and we meet all these extra characters, and one of them is a group of dwarfs, and who are, hunters and stuff. Well, we run into them again. And they're around for a while, and it's like, awesome. Love seeing these guys, And it just, that's the thing, is that these characters, they just, even though it's a huge country, in the countryside, they're traveling all over the place, they keep coming back to these characters, which makes it feel more connected. Where Game of Thrones, it seems like they were introducing new characters every week. And we were supposed to care about them, and then 3 episodes later, they'd be killed in a horrific way. And we're like, we just started caring about that guy. Why are you doing that? Who hurt you, George? Why are you doing that? So it's not that bad here. We get a lot of characters. And again, a good whiteboard or a notebook, you'd probably be great with this. Jasker has a couple songs in there, so if you're looking, I don't think anything of them are as catchy as Toss a Coin to the Witcher, but there's a couple good ones in there, or at least one really good one. There's a couple elf throwbacks, and again, everything seems to come back around. The writing on this series has been really good. I'm actually really impressed by it because they're able to keep all these elements going and juggling in the air, and you don't feel like any of them are getting short shift. When they bring somebody back, they bring them back for a good reason. It may be a convenience to bring them back, like, oh, we just happened to run into this person. But why they're there then suddenly makes sense, So you got to kind of let the convenience factor go a little bit here, but not so much that it's going to throw you out of the experience of the show. One of the things I did notice, and I haven't seen a lot of people talking about, but it surprised me some, is that the amount of nudity and sex in season 2 has been dialed back greatly. In season 1, we had a bunch of, scenes of Henry Cavill shirtless. We had nude scenes of Yennefer and a bunch of other characters. I mean, there was a lot. There was a lot. And in kind of a Game of Thrones fashion, too. Season 2, I think we get maybe 1 or 2 nude scenes, and it's never Yennefer. We don't get any shirtless Henry Cavill scene, but we get a shirtless scene of Jasker, who's much more ripped than I expected. Just saying. He's in really good shape for a musician. We get some creatures, we get some new creatures, but they're more mutated creatures from season 1. We don't get a whole lot of brand new creatures. We get, maybe in the first episode we get one, but it's not like, season 1 where it was more about the monster hunting. This is more of him trying to protect Ciri and just happens to be coming across monsters. The order of Witchers just gets hit big time in this series. So at some point, they're going to have to figure out how to start making more Witchers, or we're going to end up, this is the last, season 5 of this is going to be the last Witcher or something, which could be an interesting story because we don't have Witchers nowadays. So something had to happen to them. But I think they did a really good job of season 2. My only complaint is that it doesn't feel like a self-contained season. I don't mind a cliffhanger ending and it's not really, like season 1 ended with the 2 of them coming together, and the big question is, well, what happens next? Tune in next season. This one, there's a lot of things that haven't been resolved. We find out that Dijkstra, the spy for the other kingdom, or the mage for the other kingdom, is Jasker's benefactor. We find out the White Flame is actually Ciri's father, who was presumed dead. He was the guy in season 1 who had been cursed to be a hedgehog type creature, and then Geralt freed him of the curse, and the child surprise thing was from that. And there's a lot of other things in motion. So it's much more of a Game of Thrones ending where we just came to the end of the season, but there's very little resolution. We just ran out of episodes and we're going to pick it up next season. So that part bothered me a little bit. I would like them to be a little bit more clear cut of an ending, but we didn't get that. But we have a lot of stuff to build on. The Wild Hunt, Ciri becoming more powerful, Yennefer got her magic back, and now there is this sort of found family going on. And found family seems to be big in stories right now. Hawkeye is a kind of a found family story when you think of Kate, and stuff like that, and the LARPers and everything else. But this new family is Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri as kind of their faux daughter, that Yennefer is now training her as a sorceress, and Geralt is training her as a witcher. So she's going to be this kind of hybrid character, which is going to be interesting to see how that all works out. And I now can't wait for season 2 or season 3. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the prequel. I'm looking forward to season 3. I was really pleased. I watched it all in 2 nights, and it's great. If you're looking for something to watch over this holiday weekend and you haven't seen it yet, check out season 2 of The Witcher. Make sure you watch the animated movie between seasons 1 and season 2. And if you're looking for something to listen to, pick up the books. They're a lot of fun. And the games are good too. This is a strong franchise all around. So hopefully it's going to get some more attention, and we're going to keep getting good seasons. All right, we're going to wrap this up here. Remind you guys that Rex and John are coming up next with comic collectibles, a lot of Spider-Man paraphernalia or collectibles. You want to stick around for that. Please hit the like and the subscribe buttons. Tomorrow there'll be a Pop Go the Writers in this time slot, so Paul and I will be here. In a sense, it'll be pre-recorded, but thank you all. I hope you all have a great holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is you celebrate. I hope it's wonderful, filled with family, friends, and lots of love. Take care, everybody. See you next week. Good night.